Hey everybody, thanks for stopping by. We have a fun one today. We have my friend Chris, who you probably know as Tokyo Megaplex. And he's going to actually be our first person to be on stream and streaming his screen and showing us actually some stuff about clean NFTs. It'll be in some Houdini stuff. But yeah, we can have a little intro and get to know Chris, but I'm sure you guys already know him. So let's flip over to that. Hey, Chris, what's up?
Hello, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Good. Yeah,
Excited to be here.
excited to be here. This big, very famous show. Lucky guest to be on. But yeah, how's it going? How have you been?
It's good. Things are good. I have recently moved out to LA. And so that's been sort of the biggest life change thing. Been doing, some freelance stuff, been doing some personal stuff,
Yeah.
been dabbling in the NFT world that
Mm-hmm.
everyone I'm sure is either familiar with, loving, or incredibly sick of by now. It's been a
Yeah.
roller coaster of emotions for the past couple of months.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you were out here in New York and we had met up at a couple different things. I didn't know you were in LA. I thought
Yeah.
you were you moved upstate or no?
Oh, no, no, no,
No,
no.
you
Yeah,
just you. That makes
I'm
sense
in
why it's
I'm in
always
LA
been
now.
like sunny, and I'm like, yeah, like
Yeah,
why
check it
is it?
out. We got
Oh
we got the
wow,
pool now. It's great. It's great. We
that's
love it.
awesome. Yeah, you've
It's
been doing
it's been a
some music videos, which was crazy and
mhm.
like very cool to see. Like, I feel like a lot of times when you do client work, there it's like pigeonholed a little bit more, but
Yeah.
like it's like very much your stuff, like right up your alley.
No,
It's like
yeah,
this is
those
awesome.
have been great because those have been through just like friends of mine who've been like making those. So it's Cole Cush is sort of my one of my animator friends who has done a lot of stuff for Adult Swim in the past and is
Hmm.
sort of known for doing like very uncanny valley
Yeah.
Daz characters,
Okay.
doing a lot of Daz stuff. We've done a couple of music videos together before and sort of things like that. And then uh, a couple months ago, I worked with him and his friend Dan Straight, who I got introduced through for doing this like live show for Lil Yachty,
Mm.
which was fun. And I was just doing like taking Cole's sort of Daz version of Lil Yachty and doing some kind of crazy sims on him and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and they have started recently this new studio called Grin Machine,
Mm.
and they've been doing some music videos and stuff. The first two big projects have been sort of these two things for Brockhampton.
Yeah.
The first one being a music video for Buzz Cut, and then the second one being this music video starring Lil Nas X and Dominic Fike. And I so they sort of hit me up in both of those sort of last minutes, just like add some sims for certain shots where they thought they could kind of use that.
Hmm.
And that was a ton of fun. And so it was just sort of the three of us, and we're all sort of buds. So it was very chill compared to working for I don't know, some like egomaniac music video director
Yeah.
dude. But yeah, that was awesome. I love all the stuff that they're doing. Dan especially is just like killing it directing these music videos and
Hmm.
has such a cool directorial and sort of editing style.
Yeah.
And I always love working with Cole and his models and all that stuff. So yeah, that is super cool. Definitely keep your eyes peeled on Grin Machine. They're going to be making a lot
Cool.
more cool, weird stuff.
Cool. So for anyone that doesn't know, like, I mean, obviously Chris Rutledge. So like, how would you kind of like define like in like a like bio? What would your bio be if like no one knows like who you are? Like, obviously very like visible like style and stuff to the things you do. But I mean, I
Totally.
think in our circles, like a lot of people obviously know. But like for anyone that doesn't, stopping by, what's like the short bio for Chris?
Yeah, I usually just say that I'm like a CG artist and short filmmaker. But I feel like that's a little bit broad. So if I'm trying to get a little bit more specific, I'll say like I like doing character work. I like doing a lot of Houdini stuff. That's sort of become my main software of choice.
Mm-hmm.
So that ends up resulting in me doing kind of effect stuff. And then I've sort of, in order to simplify that, just started writing in my bio that I like to make floppy characters.
I mean,
So
it's to the point. I mean, it's pretty close. Yeah.
exactly,
So
yeah. So
uh,
that's what I would say is I'm CG guy who likes to make floppy characters,
yeah.
basically.
I think my favorite thing was always that like you made like being like a Houdini artist like less like this like weird pedestal of like seriousness that like a lot of people had, where it was like, I mean, because it's used like feature film stuff, but you're also like, but hey, we could also just like maybe not take it so seriously and like do some
Totally,
awesome like
totally.
stuff, but like with like very still high level technical things that needed to be done to achieve that stuff. And so it's still like just like a lot
Yeah.
more fun and like accessible to like people to
I
watch. And
mean, that's
yeah.
always been sort of the thing for me about it is like I don't know. I don't know what really necessarily drew me to Houdini to start with. Like I think I just wanted to learn some effect stuff, but I ended up really liking it and I like the workflow a lot. And I was like, man, there's so much cool creative stuff you can do with this and so many ways you can apply these tools to making stuff that isn't just like explosions, trying to get a job
Mm-hmm.
at ILM,
Yeah.
things like that. And so yeah, it was or like Man vs Machine or whatever, which is, I wish I could make stuff like that. My design sensibilities are not quite there. And I definitely come from like also like a 2D animation background. Like I got started, because of like newgrounds.com and
Mm-hmm.
seeing that there were like kind of other people around my age when I was in middle school who were like able to make animations in Flash. And so that definitely influenced my current style a lot still, with those sort of weird cartoons. But yeah, I feel like there's just so much potential for people to use Houdini for all kinds of other stuff, and especially now that their side effects is putting more of a focus on like character animation and things like that. It's a very exciting time to be, one of those dudes in the niche of making kind of character based stuff in Houdini.
Mm-hmm.
So excited to be able to push that a little bit more as well.
Yeah, I've been really happy with like they just seem to like really be in tune with like what people are asking for, and like just even from like when I picked it up to like, which wasn't even that like long ago, which was like I think it was like version maybe 15, I think is when I picked up like starting to dabble. And like
Mhm.
at that time I was like, why isn't there like a node for this very simple thing? And now they're like introducing tons and tons more like artist driven things where they're like finally hearing that. It's like, between like
Totally.
the side effects labs tool set and like all the new stuff they're implementing, it's like, yeah, there kind of is like a lot of notes for the things where I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay, this is like so much more accessible, like especially for like me coming from C4D into this, and like even before
Yeah.
C4D, like After Effects, it's like, yeah, all this stuff makes sense. Once you kind of just get that like very basic level of like understanding, like just the simple language in there of like points, vertexes, normals, like all that stuff. Once
Exactly.
you get that, you're like, okay, cool. Like I get where all these things plug in, and it's like great.
Right. That's the thing about it that I feel like a lot of people don't realize until you come into Houdini is like when you're in 3D, you're just working with a bunch of tools and you have
Mm-hmm.
all these tools at your disposal. And those tools, can be really high level stuff like, I don't know, like a wrapped up like pyro solver that will do like a whole simulation for you in like one node.
Right.
And it can be really low level stuff like points, vectors, um, normals, like attributes, and even like just like, once you start writing vex code and stuff, it's like, multiplication, addition, subtraction, like modulo functions, like all that stuff is just like super, super low level stuff. And you start to realize everything that's complex is just built out of these simpler things,
Mm-hmm.
and you can kind of break everything down into a smaller process. But yeah, I think that you're right that Houdini used to be more like of that super low level stuff, and there wasn't as much sort of high level things. And now they're making a lot of sort of like tools so that people who want to get into it and maybe just use it for like lighting or use it for like more basic stuff, and light assets made by like people in the effects department maybe who are working with the more low level tools, there can be more of sort of like a workflow there. You don't have to necessarily have the effects department just making stuff that pipelines out to Maya or whatever, where everyone else is kind of doing the main work. It's like more and more stuff is kind of able to happen in Houdini, and there can be sort of a wider range of people and technical abilities of people
Mm-hmm.
who are using the software, which is super cool.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the talks like back then I was watching was like a TD making tools that were like great tools for his like artists to use in Houdini. I was like, well, that's awesome, but I'm not a TD, so I cannot make those tools for myself to use. And now Houdini's kind of like
Totally.
taking that role to be like, cool, all that other stuff is still there, but we were like noticing that a lot of like artists just need this specific thing, so we'll wrap it in this like little node, and you can use that. And it's
Totally.
like, oh, okay,
And
cool.
not only is it like good for people who don't necessarily understand stuff on that low level, but I think it's also good for people who do understand that stuff, and it kind of can help speed up workflows so that like
Right.
I don't have to build out an entire DOP network with
Yeah.
the flip object and the flip, whatever, or
Mm-hmm.
the pyro object and the pyro, solver and all the different things. It's like I can just use the SOP level one, and then if I want to get more complicated, I can like break it open, dive into it, mess with it more. Like
That's such a
there's
big
all the
part.
sort of
Like I feel
ability to
like
sort of
people,
jump in like that.
yeah, they're like people undervalue that part of it. Is that like, like C4D comes out with like a great new tool. It's like that's an amazing tool, but it's locked off. It's like all black boxed. And then like Houdini's like, cool, if you want to like steal parts from this, or like I remember I was like my mind was blown when someone's like, you can flip on like OpenCL in this solver if you
Hmm.
want. It's like you just dig
Yeah.
in there and you like flip one thing on. And I was like,
Yep.
you could just go inside the thing and like write new
Totally.
code into it if you want to. Like they don't recommend it because obviously very smart people are building these tools, but like it's open. Like if you want to go and steal like little snippets of stuff, it's like very easy if you like know what you're doing to go and do like surgery
Totally.
inside these nodes, which is really awesome because yeah, it just kind of like always pushes to like the best end product is because like, couple people will be like, hey, this is like a way better way to build this tool, and they're like, oh yeah, that is, and then like everything increases like in magnitudes like better, which is
Totally.
very
Totally. Yeah. The
cool.
whole HDA workflow and just being able to make tools for people and grab them from other people and all that stuff is so awesome. Yeah. I think they're doing a great job. They're definitely, my favorite, software and software
Yeah.
company right now, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
So
obviously
I
a
think
big Houdini evangelist.
the big other part of that is that I think that all this NFT stuff, and it was like NFTs kind of seemed like a great space for people, like you and I feel like we do for sort of similar things where it's like a lot of like tests or like technical driven things with like an artistic like spin on them at the end. And I mean, you've had some short films that have like done massively well and like got like staff picks where it's like you want to dig into like caustics and stuff for something, and like you just figured out like a way to make a short film out of that, like with like really like artistic like direction of it. And but I mean like at the end of it it's also like just a mathematical thing of like wanting to figure out caustics and like drive those in a better way. I think that that's really
Totally.
cool, and like a great place for like NFTs was that like we found like a home for these things where it's like, oh, like I spent like time, like I directed this, but like I can also like then put it out as a piece versus kind of having this whole big like concept and like idea and direction, like
Totally.
big like heart-wrenching story behind a piece. It's like it's for
Yeah.
both of them. So curious kind of
Yeah.
like you, because you
Project.
were early to that stuff too, like you were on super rare,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind
Yeah.
of like much before this all blew up kind of in like February kind of area.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because I felt like it was blowing up and it was peaking in like October.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
like that was when I first started like really hearing about it. I feel like I definitely saw people posting stuff before then, and I was just like, "This is weird. What is this? I don't get this. Like, is this worth my time? Probably not." And then yeah, started like really hearing about it in October, and I was like, "Well, I should apply to all the places." And I did that then, and then ended up really starting kind of getting accepted and stuff like that in the beginning of January. So I sort of started around then. I was on Maker's Place before that for a bit, but I didn't have like a lot of success with sales or anything like that until yeah closer to like January. Um, but yeah, it's definitely yeah going back to what you were just saying with respect to specifically that short film Transmissive that I like finally sort of put together or whatever. Um, that was a cool project because it was like I started it and I was like, this is just going to be some like Instagram posts that I'm going to make, like, and
Mm-hmm.
it will be like, a bunch of different scenes and I'll do like a little series of them.
Yeah.
And then it quickly became like, well, I'm doing all these and I can just edit this all together into like a short film and have it sort
Mm-hmm.
of feel like a film because, it's all the stuff is in the same world and, just can like edit it in a certain way. And, I had like a soundtrack that I wanted to use for it and all that stuff. So it was interesting that it went from at one point just being like, these are going to be render tests to like, this is going to be a short film. And then, the last chunk of shots that I did were like very much like designed to be like, parts of a film, whereas the first chunk were just like,
Right.
these are just experiments. So it's fun to work on a thing like that, and I think that there's definitely more potential for people, just 3D artists in general, to do stuff like that, and end up turning something that starts off as an experiment into a little bit of a more ambitious project. And I think that they will be glad that they did, because it's definitely super rewarding to put out like a big project like that. And then also there's a lot of stuff you can do with it. Like you can send it to, film festivals, animation festivals and stuff like that, which is sort of what inspired me to want to finish making it into a full film, is I just love going to film festivals and animation festivals. And yeah, I would love to see sort of more people, doing sort of more technical stuff, getting involved in those kind of scenes,
Mm-hmm.
and making stuff for those. Because there's not a ton of, I feel like if I go to an animation festival, I'm like, up until recently, maybe it's hard to change, but up until recently, I'm like usually like the only guy who's like, even heard of Houdini, let alone like uses Houdini at like the animation festival or whatever.
Right.
And then conversely, I go to like something like NAB, and I'm like the only guy who's been to an animation festival at NAB. So it would be really cool to see, I think, more crossover there. And there's like definitely a lot of, I don't know, potential for, artists to be able to either put out work that they're already making as short films and like consider
Mm-hmm.
it to be a short film and submit it to a festival, as well as like make work specifically for the sake of having kind of like a film or a short film in your portfolio, a more ambitious project that you can also submit to festivals and all that. So yeah.
Cool. And then well, I think where a lot of people heard the first of like clean NFTs, and like started
Mm,
actually using a platform. Like a lot of people were very concerned about that kind of aspect of like Ethereum and like traditional kind of ones that were around. And then they were like, well, 2.0 is coming out. Maybe that will fix it. But then everyone, found out that that was going to be a little bit longer than expected. And
totally.
some people were,
Yeah.
a whole big debate there. But then, like, kind of around that time, you start just championing this one place, which I'm just going to butcher it.
Hickett Nunk
Hickett
is what I've been
Nunk.
saying.
Okay.
Hickett Nunk, almost like two words. It's three words, but Hickett, like almost
Right.
like bucket,
Yep.
but Hickett. And then
Hickett
Nunk,
Nunk.
like
Cool.
HICETNUNK is like how I'm pronouncing it. I've heard a lot of people say Hickett Nunk,
Hmm.
mostly people without, the harsh American accent.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. And then I've heard people call it hen a lot because
I've
that's
seen
sort of
that
the
just because it's so
abbreviation.
much easier to say. But yeah.
Yeah. And then also sometimes people call it here and now, which is like what it
Hmm.
is meant to mean in
Right. Because
Latin.
it's Latin. Yeah.
Um, but um, but yeah, that's been a fun thing to get involved in. I mean, it's been a really interesting, like I said, couple of months, I think, for everyone, figuring this stuff out, and like the Medium article wars and all that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I think there's definitely, I don't know, it's an interesting conversation to be having. And yeah, I feel like I sort of like burnt out a bit on the sort of like Ethereum NFT side of stuff, because it was tricky, because it was like I was doing it for a few months, and I was doing it while I was moving to LA, like, and that
Mm-hmm.
was kind of cool because I didn't have time to work on commercial projects while I was like road tripping and stuff like that, and like finding a place to live, and
Right.
not having a full PC and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
um so yeah, it was interesting, trying to sort of like see if I could, make, some amount of money somewhat close to what I would be making if I was working commercial gigs. And I probably made like half as much as I would have if
Mm-hmm.
I was straight up just working on commercial gigs that whole time, which in my opinion is still great. Like that's awesome that I was able to sort of like, not totally take like a massive hit when I
Right.
was trying to sort of move and, figure all that stuff out. And, I wasn't like totally destroying my bank account.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the same time, it ended up really being super time consuming for a couple of reasons. One, it was just super stressful, like, figuring out, oh, is this thing going to get a sale? Am I going to get a bid? Should I like DM this guy who bought my previous thing? Like,
Right.
oh, this guy says he's going to bid and then he doesn't. And then, this guy
Mm-hmm.
bids and then he pulled it out. And it's just like, there's like so much that I just like would not have, considered, like, that people would have to
Mm-hmm.
deal with when they're like sort of selling their work, especially as like a one of one, right?
Right.
So that part was stressful. And then, of course, in addition to that, there was the whole, ecological debate, which was stressful on one hand of like, oh, like, what was my responsibility here? And like, what should I be doing about this? And should I stop? Should I just do it less? Should I ignore it? How bad is it really? Blah, blah, blah. Lots of research that
Mm-hmm.
I had to do. And that took up a lot of time. And then in addition to that, just people like arguing with you all the time about this
Right.
stuff, and like people like, like kind of like shaming artists, like, and all that stuff, which is, obviously not good. And I wouldn't say that that's like most people who, I feel like, honestly, I think most people are in the boat of, I'm going to kind of wait this out and see where this goes, and
Right.
I'm not picking a side, and whatever. But there are definitely pretty vocal people who are like, oh, this is, like horrible, and like,
Yeah.
I don't know, the way I was sort of thinking about it for a bit was like, well, I don't want to just like mint stuff willy-nilly. I'm gonna, like, be pretty cautious about minting stuff and like only do one of ones for a bit,
Mm-hmm.
at least until Ethereum 2.0 or whatever. And I thought that doing one of ones was kind of better anyway, because there was also like the huge gas fees associated with stuff, so I didn't want to
Right.
have to pay gas for like an addition of 10 or 20 or whatever. Because the other stressful part is like having to worry about recouping the gas fees, and also
Mm-hmm.
like Ethereum going up and down, you're checking that constantly. It was just like so much stuff to think about, right? So
Right.
I think it ended up getting to the point where it was like, this just isn't even worth the amount of time that it's sucking up. Like, I'm making probably less money than I would if I just like completely ignored it and focused on my freelance work
Yeah.
and whatever. But that said, I'm also like not really stoked about the idea of like having to only make money by working for like corporations or whatever. So like,
Mm-hmm.
there is a lot of sort of interesting stuff with this sort of space, and the fact that people are starting to like sort of give value to people's personal work for the first time, like really ever in digital work.
Right.
I've also like seen a lot of people on the internet making the argument that's like, oh, why don't you just sell your art then, or why don't you just do commissions? And
Yeah.
it's like, well, first of all, commissions are not the same thing. Like, I don't want to do work that someone's telling me to do. uh and also, like, how much am I going to charge for my commissions? Because I'm seeing these people who are saying to do commissions, like saying that they're going to charge like $50 for an illustration, and it's like, okay, well, then that's like not really like gonna, like,
Sustainable at
that's not
all.
sustainable. That's much worse than just making commercials for like Tide Pods or
Yeah.
whatever. And then in addition to that, like, there's people who are just saying like, oh, why don't you just sell your art? Like, why do you have to do like blockchain stuff? And it's like, well, there's no market for this if it's not on the blockchain. Like, this is what makes it something that people want to actually spend money on, is the fact that it is, it has this um uh, scarcity aspect to it that the blockchain is able to give it. And I think it makes sense. And I'm starting now, especially as I'm doing some collecting of my own on Hicketnunk for the first time. I'm starting to like understand the appeal, and I'm like starting to enjoy it a lot. But I totally get that for most people, it just like doesn't make sense, especially for like, like younger people who are complaining about this stuff on Twitter, who, haven't made a lot of money yet, and, like, don't understand like paying for something that, they can just get for free or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's a super weird thing. It's been a weird journey, I think, for everyone,
Yeah.
regardless of your opinion on this stuff. But I think that it has a lot of potential to end up being something cool in the future. And it's definitely still pretty early days right now. I wouldn't say it's really close to being there yet, for in terms of like where I would like it to be. But I think that it definitely has the potential, if people sort of rally behind it the right way, to end up being something really cool, and to give artists a alternate option to just working for corporations, which makes me excited. um, so yeah, anyway, that was a long ramble, but I can chat specifically about getting into like the clean
Yeah.
NFT space, or Hicketnunk if you want.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think my only thing about like NFTs, kind of what you're saying, is like early days is like, I mean, if you go back to like early internet, like web pages were just so basic, and like it was just kind
Yeah,
of like, just like everyone had their own website, and it was just like maybe a form, maybe a couple images and some text. It's like it was just so basic. And then like as that like grew, like obviously we have like crazy stuff now of
right.
like the internet is just so like vast and crazy in what it can do. So it's like, yeah, we're at the very early days where people are just kind of like using it at its like face level value, when there's so
Yeah,
much more stuff that can be kind of added into it. And that's where I was really cool about, like when you posted stuff, I was like, oh, it's like a 3D object that you can like rotate around. Like I haven't seen that. Like that seems like a proper use of this technology. Or like some
totally,
people were like putting up like 360 VR scenes. I was like, well, this is like the proper use for this. Like this makes sense of like how cool this can be versus like an image. It's like, yeah, like that's just
totally,
like obviously the first like idea that everyone has of like what you can do with this. But like just pushing beyond that into like way cooler stuff was where I was like, oh yeah, that's like actually like a next step that I haven't seen like many places. Or I think Super Rare had some like 3D objects you could put up, but it was super basic in how you could do it. um but yeah, yeah, if we want to go into kind of, you share more of the stuff about the kind of process of
yeah,
getting
yeah,
into
yeah,
it,
yeah.
that'd be super cool.
Yeah. So yeah, and on that topic too, I think it's interesting how the internet has evolved into this space where like it used to be like, yeah, like you were saying, it was everybody's own website, and
Hmm.
it was like it's really cool. And it's now gotten to this point where like I'm not really that stoked about like the internet anymore. Like, I mean, obviously it's a really useful tool, and it's I spend like all day on the internet, but at the same time, it feels like the internet is like five different companies, and like they just control everything.
Yeah.
And that is super lame in my opinion, and has made the internet a lot less exciting than it was when I was first kind of like getting really into it. And there was like all these different sites, and I would like go on to like all of these different like Flash animators web pages. And they would have all kinds of different designs. Sometimes their sites would just be made in Flash, and they'd have all kinds of like cool interactive stuff. And then they'd also have like forums, and you could like meet and talk to people on the different forums and things like that. And there wasn't any like one centralized social network necessarily. um, and I I feel like the with starting with this sort of NFT stuff, and the Web 3.0 stuff that people are talking about with the blockchain and all that, it could get back to being a cooler thing where it's not just run by the same 3 to 5 companies, like for the most part. So I'm pretty stoked about that aspect of it, and Hicketnunk specifically has made me even more excited about that stuff, because also again, going back to like me not enjoying like getting all my money from working for corporations. I also don't enjoy like when I make personal work, like I just have to put it on Instagram and Twitter basically, and those are sort of like my options. And I'm just doing
Right.
that for free, and I'm making money for Facebook and blah blah blah.
Hmm.
So it's like, I don't know. I feel like people need to consider that stuff when they're coming out like against the idea of selling digital art or whatever, and all these different kind of marketplaces and things like that, because they're offering kind of a potential alternative to all of this stuff, that maybe again isn't quite there yet. But I want to see more people who, especially people who are critical of it, to kind of get involved and help figure out how to sort of shape the future of the web into being like a better space for everyone.
Yeah.
So with Hicketnunk, I heard about it, I think like probably in like the beginning ish of March for the first time. Um, I saw this guy Quasimondo, Mario Klingman. I don't know if you follow him at all, but he's like an AI artist, sort of like one of the bigger people on the internet, on Twitter
Is his
especially,
icon
kind
just
of.
like a Q, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Quasimondo. And I remember being like really impressed with his sort of like GAN stuff when that was sort of like first becoming a thing. Um, and he was posting about it, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, let's check this out. It's a clean NFT platform. Um, and I went to the page and it was like so confusing. Like I was like,
Yeah.
I don't understand what this is at all. There's all these numbers everywhere. It says sync. Like, is this like, how do I buy stuff? Like I have
Right.
to get like this weird cryptocurrency I've never heard of, like super weird, very minimal. But also like uh it didn't feel as minimal at first as it does now. I feel like the first time I looked at it, it was just very off-putting in terms of being like, this
Hmm.
is super confusing.
Right.
um and then I saw some more people slowly like get interested in it and get onto it, and then I saw he posted like a free thing on there, and it was like, yeah, just go grab this if you want. And I was like, oh, that would be sick to own a Quasimondo piece. um but I didn't bother figuring it out because it was like, I don't know how to get Tezos and all this stuff.
Hmm.
So anyway, then fast forward a bit, my friend Matt Ebb, who is a Houdini guy, super smart Houdini guy who is in Australia and I think works at ILM now. He posted on his Twitter that he was joining Hicket Nunk, and that he, and he had a whole sort of like, manifesto or like sort of essay of like his reasons for doing it. And it was like, it said something along the lines of like, I think that this space has potential. I might be quoting him wrong, so forgive me, Matt, if this is not totally accurate, but it was like, I think like the NFT space has potential and it's like going to be sort of like the future of, digital art and stuff. But I think that proof of work is like a really bad technology, especially when we're in the middle of the climate crisis, and
Right.
we should be doing what we can to mitigate that. So I'm trying to help move people over to a cleaner option by joining Hicket Nunk and making my NFTs on a clean blockchain that uses literally millions of times less electricity than Ethereum. So I was like, okay, cool. And then I checked his stuff out and I was like, okay, this is like less intimidating than it was when I looked at it like a couple of weeks ago when it
Hmm.
like had literally just launched, and like you couldn't even sell stuff yet, I think.
Right.
Like it was up for like a week when you could only list stuff without like having it for sale.
Well, I think someone said that
Um,
like they weren't planning, like they were like still kind of building it, and then they're like, oh well, it's just like this stuff is just like going so fast. We just kind of have to make it open for people so that we can be like catch people as like this wave is going up, and like they weren't planning, like it wasn't going to be public yet for a bit, and they just kind
yeah,
of like
yeah,
made
yeah,
it public. They're like, okay,
yeah,
yeah, sure.
totally. I mean, when I first saw it, it definitely had more of the vibe of like, oh, this is more of like a art project in and of
Yeah.
itself, or like it's trying to like make a statement than it is like to be an actual marketplace or whatever, or like a viable sort of, yeah, marketplace. Um, and then I started seeing more people post about it, and I saw Matt's thing, where he was like, I want to try to help fix the climate problem by convincing more people to move on to this space instead. And I was like, that's cool. I'm pretty burnt out of doing super rare and posting it on Twitter and having to deal with backlash and all that stuff. And
Right.
and I'm also just feeling like it's too stressful. And I'm also feeling like, I don't want to have to deal with like the guilt of like all the Ethereum blockchain transactions. And like I don't know, my feeling about the energy usage stuff is that it my understanding is the NFTs themselves on the blockchain are not directly contributing to like any kind of like carbon emissions, but that it's promoting the use of the proof of work blockchain, which
Yeah.
is
Hmm.
so, and NFTs are becoming such a big thing right now that it's definitely having influence on the price of Ethereum, which is driving mining, which is doing all this other stuff. So it's not great. Being one person posting one of ones is not gonna make or break the climate.
Right.
But
You're
that
definitely
said,
feeding a machine that is definitely not great. Like that's
exactly,
like the thing. Yeah.
exactly. And I mean, the other way I would justify it too is like, well, like my alternative to this is again doing work for corporations who
Right.
are like even worse. So like I don't know, like like what's the best thing for me to do here.
And I mean, even digital artists like ourselves, Billy Chitkin, who Gurnge on Twitter and stuff, also kind of did a lot of the research. And I don't want to misquote him either, but he did a lot of research of just kind of like, is it any better to render over a weekend?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm using electricity like no
Oh,
matter what.
totally.
And if I can make money back where I don't have to work for a corporation rendering every single day, maybe it's even a cleaner option, like cuz then I'm not rendering for the whole
Totally.
time. So it's like
Totally.
it's a very weird gray area, especially for like
Yeah, yeah.
PC
That's
heavy
sort of,
users.
yeah, that's sort of how I feel. But that said, I also like having looked into it more, it's like, damn, like Bitcoin is like
Bad.
not,
Yeah.
helping the climate issue, and like itself directly does need to be addressed somehow. And with the price goes up, it does make it worse, and
Hmm.
it's going up, and mining is increasing exponentially. And a couple years ago, this wasn't even a problem that anyone would even like consider, because it just wasn't a problem. Like the amount of energy being used to mine Bitcoin was like pretty negligible. And now it's like growing at this crazy rate where like in a few years it could be like really, really bad. Um, and then there's arguments against that are like, oh, well, Bitcoin is making people want to do more research into clean energy because of this and that. But it's just like, I don't know. I feel like proof of work needs to go away. Like it needs to be replaced. And obviously they're working on that with Ethereum. They're not working on that with Bitcoin, it sounds
Hmm.
like, which is bad. But yeah, if you can support a proof of stake blockchain instead, that's great. And I also started off like not necessarily being like, okay, well, I'm done with Super Rare, I'm done with Maker's Place. It was like, I'm going to experiment and try this place and see if I can post some like sketches, or like
Hmm.
some Procreate drawings, or like some models that I made on my iPad or whatever. Um, and I think a lot of people are getting into it starting that way, who are coming from the like super rares, rareables, whatever, OpenSea, etc. um and uh and they're getting onto there, and they're saying like, I'm going to experiment on here. And then really quickly, what happened to me and what happens to, I feel like, everyone else, is they're like, oh, this is so much better, this is like so much more like what I want this space to be like, I'm only going to do this now. I'm like,
Right.
like I still have a couple pieces up on Maker's Place, and I think one on Super Rare. And I might burn them and remint them or something later on. But I haven't done that yet. And if someone bought them, like, whatever, that's fine. But but yeah, I'm definitely not posting anything new on any site other than Hicket Dunk. There's one other one on Tezos called Calamint also, which is like more of a curated one, that I also got onto. But I think that Hicket Dunk is just the best site that I've used by far, and I don't really see anything getting close to where it's at for a number of reasons, in addition to the climate stuff. So for one, the gas fees are super low, and that's because of Tezos and because of the fact that the blockchain is so much more efficient. Um, the like transactions are so cheap, and you're just paying like a couple of like baker nodes, or people who have staked their Ethereum and made like a little node. And those nodes also, that are like doing like the mining or whatever, they're not mining, they're just like verifying these transactions. And they can run on like a Raspberry Pi. Like you don't need like an 8 GPU mining rig or
Hmm.
whatever. So there's a lot less of them, and they use a lot less power, because they don't need to be these crazy rigs. So the fact that the gas fees are so much cheaper is a massive game changer, like way bigger than I realized at first. Because one, it means I can just experiment, I can post stuff, I can post big editions, I can sell things for way cheaper. And also, like, I think it just makes the site way more diverse, in that, like, there's people with who can't afford to pay like 50, 80, $200
Hmm.
to like mint and list something on Foundation or whatever, who can then suddenly, like, basically for free, post stuff on Higgednunk and then sell it for cheap, and like afford to sort of pay their rent just off of that, depending on where they live.
Right.
um, which is super cool, and has also made the community even better. And yeah, it just like removes all of the stress and all of the sort of negativity that I was getting from those other sites. And also it's becoming more diverse as well, because, there's, I think, in the motion graphics community, there's like a lot less backlash for environmental reasons against NFTs as there are if you're like an illustrator, or you're like, in one of these other kinds of communities that is
Right.
not as sort of accepting or understanding of cryptocurrency, and thinks it's all a pyramid scheme, and all this stuff. Like, so I have a lot of friends who were like, well, I don't want to get into NFTs because I don't want to get backlash from the people who follow me. And now they're happy to get into it because they're not worried about the environmental backlash, because they are in a way doing good by helping
Hmm.
contribute to this cleaner blockchain.
Right.
So I think that also helps make the community more diverse, and have a wider range of sort of work and people in it as well,
Hmm.
which also makes it really exciting. And then I also, on top of all that, I like that the site's so minimal, and it's not like shoving prices in your face or anything like that, or there's no auctions, so there's not any people like throwing like large sums of money around. And there's also uh, they also only take a 2.5% cut of all sales and stuff. So that also, again, makes it even more accessible again, and also gives you way more room to experiment again. And those 2.5% cut goes to paying for the servers and just keeping it running.
Hmm.
And my understanding is that also like the site basically runs itself. So like you don't need like, like a dedicated team of people working on it for it to keep running. Like if the guys who are currently developing for it, and making all the sort of tools for it and adding new features just stopped, it would just keep running on its own. And it's not like run by like a Silicon Valley backed startup,
Right.
like most of the other sites are, um, which makes it so that they're able to take a much smaller cut. And it's also like totally open source, so other people can build their own tools using this site. And there's like other people who have made like companion sites that, while the site itself is super minimal, you can go onto like these other sites and see like, oh, what are the biggest sales, or who's having the most resales, and
Mm.
things like that. Because the data is all out there, it's all just on the chain, and you can like make, if you wanted, hicketnunk2 dot xyz, and you could just call it that, and you could like make a much flashier, less minimal version of Hicketnunk, and people wanted to, they could just use that instead. So it's all just like on GitHub. Anyone can make their own sort of site using the API and by viewing the objects in your Tezos wallet. And it's just really cool how kind of open it is. And I feel like all of this stuff sort of adds up to making the community really, really strong and really focus on the art. And I feel like for a lot of people getting into this stuff at first, it was really about like, oh, my friend's making big sales, I want to see if I can do that, and see if I can
Hmm.
like cash in on this before it collapses or whatever.
Right.
And it feels like this is growing into being like a much more sort of long-term sustainable thing, and it's definitely closer to where I would like to see this stuff go in the long run. And I think that anyone who tries it, who isn't already like having an insane amount of success on the Ethereum sites, will feel similarly to me, in that it feels just like a much sort of nicer, much less stressful experience overall. And it's just growing so fast now. Like I think there's just been such a vacuum for like a space like this, and it's just like sucking all these artists in, and they're all reaching out to their friends and getting them all in. You like reach out to almost anyone in the community, and you tell them that you want to get started, and they'll like happily offer to send you like one Tezo to get started minting, which is super cool. So yeah, I'm just like, I'm pretty soaked on it. I want to definitely make some more stuff for it, and it's definitely making me get sort of a lot of ideas for ways to sort of get creative with it, in ways that I just wouldn't have had the ability to before, due to the fact that it just costs so much just to put one thing up
Right.
on one of these other sites. there's just way more room to experiment. And I think because of that, it's also just moving faster, which is great. So yeah, there was a super long ramble about all that stuff, but I'm super stoked on it, and I would definitely recommend everyone just like try it out and see how you feel about it. Um, I think that most people though will sort of agree that it's definitely more what they would like it to be like, and they're having sort of a better experience from the get-go on there than they were with the other sites. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm super interested in it. I still have to figure out how to do it because, as far as I know, what it's run on, the cryptocurrency is blocked in New York City, um,
Mhm, mhm.
just because of legislation. New York's like the hardest
Yeah,
place to own crypto, like one of the most locked down places,
yeah,
like in America.
yeah,
um,
they've whitelisted like a few coins, and then besides that you just can't get any, basically, is my
yeah, which is
understanding.
so weird because I bought it here, like last year, and like I bought a bunch of
Mm,
Tezos, and I was like, oh, amazing. Let me go pull that up, and
hmm,
I was like, awesome. It's gone from, it's blocked, and I can't use it. So, but once I
damn.
figured that out with maybe VPNs, I don't know, figure it
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
But
people have been figuring ways around it for
it's just a
sure.
little bit more of a
Yeah,
pain to use it. But I mean, it's such a cool thing. But yeah, we can actually share screen and look at some stuff then
totally.
on your side, and it'll be
Yeah, you want me to share a browser screen?
yeah, yeah. We can just flip over to that.
Let me do that. Give me one sec.
We got in the chat, someone said, "What's your username
Oh,
on
my
Newgrounds?"
Newgrounds. I don't want to say because it's embarrassing, but if you look up the Loaf Zone on Newgrounds, you'll find me.
What's
Um,
Newgrounds? I'm out of the loop on that one.
what's Newgrounds?
Yeah.
Oh, it's like this old site for watching like Flash animations and submitting Flash
Oh
animations and
right, yeah. You're
stuff.
talking about
Yeah, yeah.
that.
But now they support video and HTML5 games and all that stuff. So yeah. This is though. Can you see this
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now?
yeah. We can.
Sweet. Yeah. So this is my Hickett Nunk page with some weird guys on it. Um, so you can come on here and see basically the things that I have for sale. So this is the first thing that I put up down here was this little Procreate 2D animation guy. And you can see this is object number 13,312.
Okay, so it's
So
based
that's
on how many
literally,
in the whole site, right?
yeah,
Okay.
it's literally the 13,312th object
So you don't
for
name them?
someone. No, you
You
do. So
you
I'll click
can.
on
Okay.
here. I'll click on here, and I've sold 7 out of 10. They're 10 Tezos each. I didn't know what I was doing when I was pricing these at first. I should have made these like one Tezo or something. They're a little expensive, but I did sell 3 of them. So I don't know. Maybe I did a good job. I'm just gonna leave it. But yeah, it's the title is "GIF of Man Explaining NFTs," um, and then yeah, there's some tags and stuff. You can see on here the issuer. This is my wallet address. So if I right click on here and I open this, just brings you back to my page. And every page is just hickenunk.xyz/tz/wallet address, right?
Okay.
So if you wanted to send me Tezos or send me an object, you can just grab my wallet address from here, go to your wallet
Hmm.
and send it in Temple or in Kukai or whatever wallet you use.
That was the other thing, is that it does not use MetaMask, which is what most people are used to when they use like other NFT platforms that are based on Ether. It's a new wallet, which I was
Right.
also thrown off. I was like, oh, okay.
Right. So my understanding is that, yeah, MetaMask is all just Ethereum based
Hmm.
coins. So if you want to use
Yeah,
Tezos or you want to use Bitcoin or whatever, then you need a different wallet. But yeah, I mean it's basically the same thing as MetaMask. Like it's not. I actually prefer this icon to the fox. I don't know why I'm not a big fan of the fox and the
I
MetaMask
like that he
icon,
looks
but
at you when you type in your password. I don't know. That's like
yeah, I
such a
like the
charming thing.
interactivity of it for
But
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so this is one of the wallets, and you can see I have in here my Tezos, got 51 Tezos, and I have down here all of my objects listed, and I
Oh, cool.
can look at all my objects basically in here, I can see I have um, I have my objects and I have my collection all in my wallet
Hmm.
basically. So any site that I go to that uses the Hicketnunk API and builds a site can view what I have in my wallet, and
Hmm.
I can do stuff with it through there, and it can issue commands to my wallet to do whatever.
Does
Um,
Try Showtime take these wallets or
I
no?
I doubt it.
Hmm.
I doubt it, but maybe. I know that OpenSea is adding Tezos support, which is
Hmm.
cool. So there will be some amount of sort of like interoperability on OpenSea between Ethereum and Tezos wallets. But yeah, so this is my wallet. I can see my activity in here. Another interesting thing with Tezos is that because it's proof of stake, uh, instead of mining, what you can do is in here, you can go to this delegation tab and you can delegate your Tezos. And so what that means is basically there are like baking nodes, like I was mentioning earlier, that could run on a Raspberry Pi or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone can set up a baker node. They just need to have, I think it's 8,000 Tezos. So it's a lot of Tezos. But if you don't have 8,000 Tezos, you can still participate in staking by delegating your Tezos to a baking node. So what
Hmm.
I've chosen to do is to delegate my Tezos to this node, Stake Now, who, according to Quasimondo on Twitter when he was posting about this stuff, is sort of one that's been supportive of Hicketnunk from the beginning.
Hmm.
So he wanted to sort of reward them, and I'm like, okay, cool,
Right.
I'll delegate to them. They take 15% of the interest that they make on my delegated Tezos, and I get to take the rest. So I'm basically getting free money from just having delegated my Tezos, and I don't have to do anything.
Right.
Uh, it just like works with my wallet, and it's not like costing me anything. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like my funds are being held or anything like that. It's all just like I'm just getting money for having delegated my Tezos, and it's cool because it's also like sort of like you're like voting for like a senator in a
Hmm.
way in the Tezos network, and they'll sort of advocate for certain things. So, like for example, if you want the fees across the Tezos network to be lower, then you should delegate to someone who is advocating for lower fees, so that people
Right.
don't have to pay high gas fees or whatever. Or other sort of one idea that I had that I think a lot of other people have had too. It's not just my idea. Is, and I think this will definitely happen at some point, is if a bunch of artists wanted to get together on Hicketnunk and make like sort of like an artist pool, we could make our own Baker node
Mm.
where all these artists are delegating together and have some kind of influence over the Tezos network as a whole and advocate for sort of artists, wants or whatever. And there's other cool things we could do, like say like, okay, well, we're going to do this and we're going to say, 25 or 50% of the proceeds from, doing the baking, so the fees that we get paid in for baking and helping maintain the network, will like go to like, some ecological cause or some
Right.
other kind of, thing, or help pay artists to, mint on, Hicketnunk or whatever. So there's lots of kind of cool potential there, and that's just sort of Tezos specific stuff. But anyway, getting back to the site itself, um, so it's pretty simple. Up here, you can see I just have my creation. So I have, these are mostly GLB files, these interactive guys.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the first one that I posted. This is just a GIF. But other than that, if I go onto any of these, it'll load, and it's like an interactive scene in my browser that I can sort of rotate around, which is fun. And it looks great on your phone or in your browser, and it's super minimal and just sort of focused on the art itself. I also made this one. I
Yeah, I
saw
saw
that
that. Yeah.
yeah, I saw that there was a collector of mine from Super Rare, who had bought this piece. Um, Troppo Farmer is his name. And he bought this piece from me, of this like hand washing, thing with these floppy hands. And I saw that he was on the Hickett Nunk Discord and talked to him, and I was like, oh, I'm like, what are your thoughts on Ethereum and Tezos, and like, it's cool to see that you're here and that you're not just like an Ethereum like advocate or whatever. And he was like, yeah, no, I just follow the artists wherever they go. Like, I just want to sort of support them, and like I'm really glad that I could get your piece or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And so I decided to just make this as a one of one, as like an interactive version of that piece, and just gift it to him.
Right.
So that is sort of the deal with this piece.
It's a lot
And
easier
I'm
because it's on here. It's like, gas fee for it to list, super like
oh,
tiny, and
exactly.
you
Yeah,
can
it
just
cost
give
me
it
basically
away.
nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's super fun. And yeah, I can go onto here, and in here I can see, if I go to there's the info, and then I can go to collectors, and I can see one edition of this is collected by this wallet address. So I go there, and that's Tropo Farmer, and I sent it to him. And he doesn't have any creations, I don't think. But if I go to his collection, I can then sort of browse the stuff that he's been collecting. It might take a second to load because I'm sure he's collected a lot of stuff.
And so you can
Um,
list stuff on here without listing it for sale, right? Like you just did that one, you put
yes,
it up and then you can
yeah,
send it. So technically anyone, because I mean, you put a GIF, you put these 3D things, which I think is what a lot of people are seeing, but you can just put images like any other thing, right? Like any other platform.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we go to my collection over here, um, you'll see I collected this cool MS Paint, you know, piece that someone made, um, or this GIF here of this sort of like 3D scene, 3D scene,
Right. Yeah.
which I liked a lot. Or this Rich Lord piece over here, which is also just a GIF. Um, and I can go to any of these things, and I can find, like, here's my friend Peter Javidpour, who's making super awesome
Mm-hmm.
interactive little characters in these little bubbles. And I can see all the people who collected his thing. I can go to any of their profiles. He just dropped this one today. It's 10 Tezos. And I can go to his page and then see kind of all of his guys. So he's
Peter also
got,
does streams, doesn't he? I think he does.
yeah.
Yeah.
He does some really sick streams. Yeah, he's the best. He hasn't done one in a while, but I hopefully he'll start doing some soon.
Yeah, these are
I
such a
know he's
cool
been super
style.
busy. Yeah, he's got these great characters, and I love these, like, that they're all interactive and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I love this little frog guy. Um, and you can get this frog guy, but you can also get the frog guy's medal that he made as like a separate object as well on the same day. You can like zoom in and see. Actually, I don't know if I can zoom in on my tablet, but if I had the mouse wheel, I could zoom in. Um,
And the
but
3D like stuff that this is running on, is that similar to the backend that like things like Sketchfab are running? Is it the same
yeah,
3D
it's the
file?
same
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, so it's a .gltf file or a
Mm-hmm.
.glb file. GLB is GLTF binary. Um, and you can export those from C4D. A bunch of people have done this from C4D. You can do them. Um, I know EJ just did one on C4D. This cute little cactus. Um, where's the link to Hicketnunk for this?
Which I think is also open source because I have some other friends that like work at Google who work on like helping add new stuff into that like um, file format a lot of times too.
Yeah, it's maintained. It's a GLTF. It's the Kronos group. Um, and they make OpenGL, I think, also. So yeah, it's just great because it's a really like artist friendly, easy format to kick out if you are making 3D stuff already and you don't want to. Yeah, here's a cool one. This little helmet thing. Um, it's the JPEG of 3D according to this.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it supports a bunch of stuff, including like metalness shaders and yeah, here's this EJ one. And it supports bone deformations um, and blend shapes, I think. So that's all pretty cool. There's also my friend Dan, aka Wealthy Relative, who makes some really sick GLTFs out of C4D. Um, but I've noticed that Blender has like what seems to be the best GLTF support.
Hmm.
And Houdini doesn't support doing animated GLTFs yet. So what I've been doing is exporting FBXs from Houdini because those support bones and stuff as well, bringing those into Blender and then basically just exporting GLTFs out of Blender, which has been sort of a fun excuse to dive into Blender. Ooh, there's 2 of these left for 2 Tezos. Someone come grab them. Yeah, I love this guy.
Tezos right now is like $6.20, $6 or
I
something.
think I think they jumped up a little bit. I think they're like 750 now, so it's going to be like a $15 guy, but obviously way cheaper
Yeah.
than
It's like
stuff on these
gas
other
for
sites.
like a single NFT to mint right now is like $200. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy. Oh, the other thing that he's doing that's funny is he's making like the guy, and then he's making like the gold version of the guy, like the rare one.
Kind of coming
That's
back to like loot box sort of things where it's like you have
yeah,
like the thing
yeah.
and then
If
different
you want to do like
tiers.
collectibles and stuff, this is sort of a
Yeah.
fun idea. I have an idea for sort of a spin on this idea that I'm going to try. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but I'm excited about it. But yeah, he's got some really sweet C4D GLTF guys. Yeah, these frogs are awesome. Um, and you can't really do like per point animation, or if you do, it's really heavy. Um, However, despite that, I have figured out ways to get basically like simulations and like cloth simulations or soft body simulations in there using a clever trick. So basically, I can pull up this video that I have that I recorded when I was making this guy. So basically, I animate my guy in Houdini. I do my vellum simulation to make him floppy and stuff. And then there's this really awesome plugin made by Side Effects Labs called Dem Bones. And what that does is it just figures out how to sort of like reverse engineer the point animation to be bone based instead. So it's
Hmm.
sort of like, in a way, it loses a little bit of detail, but it's sort of like the equivalent of like H.264 compression for 3D
Right.
animated stuff, where it's like rather than having the positions of each point baked into every single frame, it's simplifying it by saying, oh, these chunk of points are moving based on the influence of this bone, and it's figuring out how to
Mm-hmm.
make it out of bones. It's making these really small files. Like this thing, if this was an Alembic, would probably be like 20 megs or something, and this is only 1.3 because it's just using 30 bones, I think, in here to sort of animate and rotate and translate to get this sort of deformation.
Right.
So it's really cool that that works. And I think it's designed for baking cloth sims into like game engines and stuff, but it's pretty
Mm.
awesome for this. And there's like
Yeah.
sort of a lot of ways you can, I think, play with the GLB, GLTF format. Um, so yeah, that's sort of, I don't know, the brief overview of Hickett Nunk and GLTFs. And I just have a ton of fun on this site, just like, going into different people's collections and sort of seeing the stuff that they're making and the stuff that they're collecting. This artist right here um, made this sweet sort of flat shader GLTF bust of this character. Um, it's Aaron Hileli. I think I'm saying that name right, hopefully. But he makes really sweet little like kind of 3D character illustrative things, as well as some cool coding stuff. And he made this really sweet thing that he's selling 999 editions of, which look like they're actually mostly sold, which is crazy. But it's called um, Candy Painter, and it just basically does like a random stroke, color, and uh, and width each time. So you could, make some cool drawings with this and then mint those if you wanted. So Hikitnunk, one really cool thing about Hikitnunk is that it supports stuff like this. It supports
Right.
HTML stuff, which allows it to support like 3JS and, like other kinds of coding, web interactive stuff. So yeah, there's some really cool ones.
I think someone
Um,
picked up one where it was like they bought a game, kind of like someone had built like a small like web game that like, and they bought like they had an edition of it, which was like kind of like a crazy idea of like for people that are like aren't making like 3D art or like illustration, like coders can also be like, oh cool, like here's my experimentation on like a fun little like, I think that one was like an
yes.
automated game where just like different like little robots would like eat each other until like there was one remaining, and then you could like run it again once you reload the page. It was just like a really cool concept.
Yeah, I saw like a Flappy Bird clone.
Mm.
This is a really cool one. Check this out. So this is like Ticket Nunc logo. Um, and this was made in Houdini, I think, and Houdini and 3JS. So they made it
Oh
interactive
wow.
where you click on any of these and the light lights up. But it's also 3D, right? And
Oh
what's cool about
wow.
this is it's pretty clever where the lighting is like sort of baked, like the light
Right.
passes are all pre-baked in this 3D space.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's able to get this nice lighting without it, having to be interactive and having to run in
Right.
your browsers. It's really cheap.
That'd be really
Um,
crazy because with that kind of thing, you could like, yeah, bake like, this is even a little bit more crazy because it's baked in 3D. But like, if you had a locked off camera, you could like turn on light groups and stuff, and like have an
easily,
entire
exactly.
environment like totally
This is just that with a
interactive.
3D camera. I actually didn't even realize until like I looked at this for like I don't know for like 5 minutes or whatever, like the day I found it, and then like yesterday came back to it and was like, oh, you can move the camera around. That's crazy. But yeah, there's like I think just so much potential for creative stuff, on Hicket Dunk, due to the fact that again the gas fees are nothing, so you can experiment, and the fact that it supports things like this. And I really want to get into doing some like 3JS code
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So yeah, there's lots and lots of cool stuff like that out there, and there's lots of other cool projects people have done um, that are interactive. I am wondering if there's anything else that I should say about this. If you go to the top right of the site, there's the you can click the random button to go to a random object. You can mint objects on this thing. Um, you can, oh, nice. They took my suggestion. So I was suggesting that they get rid of, it said mint NFTs before. And I said, just get rid of NFTs, just have it say mint. Because personally, I'm just getting so sick of the term NFTs and tagging them in every post and all that stuff. And I feel like a couple of years from now, anyway, no one's going to be saying it because people are just, this is going to be sort
Mm-hmm.
of a ubiquitous thing, and people are going to
Right.
be referring to this stuff just as digital art, digital objects. So yeah, that's super cool that Raphael, the developer, the main developer, took that suggestion that I made.
You
But
also
yeah,
have a doc for all of this stuff too, like a help people
a
get set up doc, right?
Yeah, I was about to show that. So real quick, if you go on here, you go to the about page. There's this like wiki here, which is great, and honestly might just be better than my doc. But it links to the GitHub where you can like get involved with development if you're interested in that. And there's a Discord link here and all that stuff. But if you also are curious, you can go to my doc, digital objects.xyz, and digital objects is sort of what I'm saying instead of NFTs.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of been like the way that I've replaced that term in my vocabulary. But it's basically just a Google Doc, digital objects.xyz, and it sort of is like my why and how for Hicket Nunk, why I like it, how to use it. There's some links to some handy resources, including a tutorial for getting started that PressTube made, who's a pretty one of the sort of earlier adopters of Hicket Nunk who helped sort of grow it a lot. And there's also a link to Tezos NFT Faucet, which is a service that you can DM to have them send you starting Tezos to get minting. There's also a link to this Google form that you have to fill out if you want to get your profile added to the site. So in order to do that, there's no thing on the site that's like add your, edit your profile or whatever. You just have to fill out this application and they'll do it, within 72 hours or whatever, and your name and stuff will be up there. You don't need to do that to start minting stuff. It's just, to get links to your socials and all that stuff on there and help verify that it's actually you and not just like someone else posting your work as well, which is important. Right. And then there's also this thread that I linked of people making that I made the other day of people making these sort of interactive GLTF characters. So some of the ones I just showed, this one's cool with this giraffe by Milo Target or Milo Target. I don't know how to say his name exactly. But yeah, lots of cool stuff there. There's also a link to the Hicket Nunk Discord, a link to the Clean NFTs Discord, and I made a separate Discord for digitalobjects.xyz just so that like people didn't have to feel overwhelmed by the massive sort of Hicket Nunk Discord and have a little smaller sort of, space for people to hang out and talk about this stuff. And also at the bottom, as I mentioned earlier, there are like other sites people have made that can look at the blockchain and look at your digital, objects in your wallet. And so if you go down here, there's this one that someone made called objects.xyz, and it's an objects explorer. And it lets you see like, here's some free ones that people are making. Here are the latest things that have been put up for sale. Also being developed. Here's this one that's sort of similar if it loads there's the Discover page. You can sort objects by the price, basically. There's a undiscovered artists tab. That's, I think, artists who have made posts but haven't sold anything yet. There's a collector's page, so you can see like who's been collecting the most stuff. And there's like the secondary market. Here you can see John Bergerman resold this piece, or had his piece resold for 165 Tezos. And yeah, John Carroll has been doing really well on Hicket Nunk. He's sort of the skeleton GIF guy that people may be familiar with. He's been putting up one of these windows every day, which are pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
And these, like, he sells for 25 Tezos each, and they sell out like instantly every day. I have like 3 of them, I think. And it's funny because like 2 weeks ago, I was able to just sort of walk into this page and like buy up a couple of his windows. And now it's like he posts on, Twitter that he's, he has a new window up, and it's like literally sold out in like less than a minute.
Wow.
So it's crazy. This one that he posted today is pretty cool, where it sort of messes with the frame for the first time. And yeah, so there's some other cool resources down here worth checking out. Yeah, big fan of Hicket Nunk, big fan of the community that's been developing. And I would strongly encourage people who are interested to check it out. Digitalobjects.xyz. One more time, we'll take you to this Google Doc that I made. And there's a Discord and all kinds of handy resources in there. So yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, awesome. Thank you for walking through all that stuff. I think it's super cool, and people really just want like another option, I think. And I've seen a lot of people, like, mental health is a huge thing in this space, and a lot of people just sharing that like they're kind of down when they can't sell stuff out from there, and it's like a huge investment, so they don't want to like pull it. So this was kind of like really cool to see, like, oh well, like, not a huge investment, very accessible for everyone. And I think that that's something that like it just feels more in tune with kind of crypto, and a lot of that stuff is like a lot of that sort of thing going on, where like accessibility, open for everyone, and that's yeah. Someone says nice Mega 64 hat. Is that what that's from or no?
Oh, that is. Yeah. Thanks.
Nice.
Yeah, I like this hat. Um, yeah, no, I totally agree though. Yeah, I think it's for me, it like again, like I was definitely feeling the stress and all that stuff. And I can only imagine people were like feeling even more stressed than me who like maybe like, got onto Foundation in February and posted a piece and then, paid 300 gas for it and never sold it or
Right.
whatever. So yeah, it to me has been like totally like the antidote for all of the wealthy relatives here. Nice. We were looking at his stuff earlier.
Oh
What up,
yeah.
Dan? Um, but yeah, it's been like the antidote for sort of all the stress and frustrations with like the other sort of part of the NFT space. And I hope that I don't know. I hope that more people will sort of like come around to this stuff and kind of help shape it into something cool so that it's not all Taco Bell, Paris Hilton, like people who are already rich and famous just like making even more money. Like it would be really cool to see a sort of more grassroots artistic community grow and become somewhat sustainable. And
Hmm.
it feels like Hickenook is on the right track to get there. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, it was really great having you on. We got to have one on where you can come back and do some crazy stuff and show us all your Houdini knowledge, and stuff like
Totally,
that.
totally.
But yeah, this was super great. Thanks for everybody for stopping by. We have actually another stream next weekend, 2 in 1 month. How crazy is that? But yeah, P.S. Christopher, more Vellum Houdini Tuts. Yes. I mean, I think everyone will be excited to just. You're also doing some streams too, right? You've streamed
Yeah, I
once or
want to do
twice.
more. I want to do more. I'm like just I mean, I like many other people have just sort of like overbooked myself, especially since I moved here basically, and then I really just like totally just went ham on like taking bookings once I got my PC built and all that.
Hmm.
And I am taking a break now, and I want to like kind of like chill, do some streams, do some Hicket Dunk stuff, and definitely I would love to make some more tutorials. I want to do I think a hair slash grooming tutorial that I
Yes.
think a lot of people seem to
Right.
be wanting.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Thanks everybody for stopping by. And this will be up on YouTube if anyone wants to revisit it or anything. But yeah, thanks everybody. I'll see you next time. Peace.
nice.